Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the IVES number 40B15 in a 6-inch. This is a surface bolt. This is what we would call a modern style surface bolt, and this surface bolt's been available for decades. I don't know how many decades, 5 perhaps. It's certainly been available for as long as I have been selling hardware, and that's a while. A modern style because it is a sleek, geometric sort of angular, not angular, but a geometric sort of shape design. Mostly straight sort of linear design. Okay, very typical, very common, very attractive, not very obtrusive. Okay, has this handle that gives it its specific sort of projection and throw. Okay. This is a 6-inch because it's a reference to the length of the bolt, and it's available in different sizes, which we'll discover in a moment. The overall length is 6-inch. The width of the bolt itself is about just heavy on 5/8. The thickness of the body itself is just heavy on 1/4 inch. Its projection that they show is 3/4. Okay, so pushing 31, 15/16 or so. Okay. The effective projection would be about 3/4 when you deduct the sort of margin that you'll have between the edge of the door or the top of the door, maybe the bottom of the door, whatever you're securing with this. Okay. This is shown in the B15 finish, and it's shown in the 15 finish. This is B15 by IVES because it also tells us, according to their part number, that it's made of brass. This is a brass base material. Probably some steel in here somewhere. There's retaining springs that are in here that are very likely, there's something magnetic inside there, the pin that restricts the travel of the bolt or keeps it from falling out. That's going to be, everything else will be made of brass, however. And IVES will use that letter B to again infer the base material, because in other parts of their line they'll have an A for aluminum or an F that might mean zinc coated, I forget, but B will mean solid brass. Now the 15 means satin nickel. It would be more appropriate if they just called this 619 finish, which would mean it's the BHMA code for solid brass with a satin nickel finish. Okay, let's also take a couple of other dimensions. The total projection to the knob is about 13/16, and the diameter of that knob is about 5/8. It's going to include 4 screws. They appear to be identical. You'll need 2 for the bolt body itself. You access the mounting screws by moving it that way. You'll get a screw here. Moving it that way, you'll get a screw there. Okay. The other 2 screws will be for the 2 different strikes that are here. You have what would be considered a rim strike and then a mortise strike. Okay. These 2 different strikes are going to allow you to install the bolt in either a push side application or a pull side application. Let's take a closer look at both of these strikes, and then we're going to talk about the different mounting methods that can be used. Width of what's called the rim strike, that's going to be about 3/4 with an overall width of about 1 inch and 3/16. The mortise strike, or some people call this a universal strike. It's definitely not universal. It's a mortise strike is what it is. About 1 inch and 5/8 by 1/2 inch. They're both very thin pieces of material, probably 50 thousandths thick. 0.053, 0.052. So yeah, about the thickness of a commercial kick plate. Now let's switch over to, what we'll do is we will switch over to the camera view, and we're going to go over, those screws are all identical. We're going to go over the 2 different mounting types that you could simply employ for the IVES bolts, and we're also going to look at the extended description information down below. Okay, so this is the item that we're looking at here, and we're going to now dive into reviewing the different mounting types as we mentioned. So we had what we called a rim strike, which was kind of like a full lip strike like this. A couple of holes for screws, and then your bolt prep. And then, of course, we had that mortise strike. A couple of holes for the screws. Okay, and then like that. So the rim strike, that's going to be really well applied when you have an application like a single rabbet frame, double rabbet frame, just doesn't matter. Your door is going to swing in. Okay, it would be, if you're going to place that bolt, your door swings in. If you're going to place that bolt right out here, okay, and that bolt's going to project out this way. It'd be really nice to have a strike that you would mount here, come out, and there. So that's where your rim strike is going to come into play when you have an in-swinging application. Okay. There's also a type of rim strike, pardon me, there's also another application that you might use a rim strike for, and that would be where you have a Dutch door. That's your upper leaf. Here's your shelf, your lower leaf. Okay, that's a shelf, and you know this is your upper leaf, this is your lower leaf, and you know the upper leaf swings in, and then you could place that surface bolt. It would be really a Dutch door bolt is what we call it here, and then you could have your rim strike hang off a little bit, and it would work in that application because a traditional Dutch door bolt is going to work like that when the door swings in. This is a cross-section view of a Dutch door. So you would use, again, the rim strike for that. Now, in a scenario where you had either a pair of doors, okay, you've got a door here, you've got a door here, and you're going to bolt this up to the header. That's going to work out really well because what the header cross-section is going to look like, okay, now this is going to be what would be an outswing type of application. Your door is going to be here, and we're doing a cross-section, and we're just emulating. Your door swings this way, and we're just emulating a single rabbet. It could also be double rabbet, obviously, doesn't matter. But when you're going to mount that surface bolt up at the top of the door, like in this area here, okay, you're going to want that strike to be mortised or surface mounted right to the soffit of the frame. That's called the soffit, that area. The stop is this area. This is the stop, but this is the soffit. So for an outswing application, you would use your mortise strike. Okay, that's how that's going to work. So those are the different applications. It's very common. It's probably most typical that you'll use the rim strike, but not necessarily. And they do include, obviously, the mortise strike for that sort of application. You could have a window, a hopper window, you know, that swings out. You're probably going to use the mortise strike for that. Okay, and at 50 thousandths thick, you may surface mount them. It might be a little challenging to mortise something just that thin to the face of the door. Okay, but those are the different applications I think we can come up with to talk about, you know, very typically how this material is going to work. Okay, so let's switch back to our screen view and go over the extended description. They call it a decorative surface bolt. It is. It's modern in its design. It's decorative in the sense that it is perhaps decorative, that it's minimalistic. It's not ornate. It's not a colonial sort of knob or anything of that nature. The dimensional properties we've gone over. We showed earlier how it does have a concealed screw design, which is nice. Exceptional strength and durability. Interlocking construction of heavy gauge track and rod. It is. Permanent stop prevents the rod from coming out. That was that steel riveted roll pin, or that steel roll pin that was in the base of the unit. That tension spring holds the bolt in the desired position, meaning in an application where it's vertical, The bolt won't creep down or fall down with time, or meaning it's pointed up, but if it was pointed down, it won't fall down and engage the strike prematurely. Track assures smooth operation and interlocks with side edges of rod to eliminate marring. Sure, you know what they're saying. Track assures smooth operation and interlocks with side edges to eliminate marring. Here's what they mean by that. In this application, in many surface bolts, you've got the long rod, but then you've got the mounting points that are over it, and they will be marginally decorative. Okay, and that's going to kind of look like, well, that's no good. Okay, then your rod sits inside of here. Okay, this would be like a cross section. What happens, the marring comes in when you slide the bolt back and forth. You do have a tendency to mar the face of the bolt a little bit. Okay, now better manufacturers will put glides underneath both of these areas to not mar that rod, but it does occur. With the IVES bolt, because it is a track sort of application, okay, where your bolt literally fits in like this. Okay, here's what I'm driving at. You're not going to really have a marring of anything on the surface. So it's a really nice, clean sort of design, I think, what they're referring to. Decorative 5/8 knob to facilitate bolt operation, made from extruded brass or aluminum. If you ordered a 60A15, that's going to mean aluminum. I don't know that they make these in aluminum. We'll look. Available in 3, 4, and 6-inch lengths. Packed with both universal, that's what I'm calling the rim strike. Yeah, you could certainly use that in a universal sense, I suppose. I don't think in some applications like that outswing it would be better to use a universal or what I'm calling the rim strike versus the mortise strike. Okay. This is a A156.16 is the ANSI document that this piece of hardware is in compliance with. Satin, nickel, clear-coated solid brass. Okay. Now let's switch over to the installation instructions. But first, the product brochure. The product brochure is an overview of surface bolts from IVES. And their 40 series. And they do have the A finishes. So here's our decorative surface bolt. We've gone over all of this and the dimensions. Other finishes, 605 for polished brass, 609 for antique brass, 613 for oil rub bronze, 619, the bolt in question here is satin nickel, 625 for polished chrome, and 626 for satin chrome. Okay, 3, 4, and 6-inch lengths. In an aluminum-based material that you can do in 3-inch only, it would be a gold or a brass type color, a nickel type color, and then an aluminum color you can do on aluminum-based material. Okay. The other bolts that are notable on this document is going to be the SB 453, incredibly common, same application, but incredibly common in commercial applications. Here would be your mortise strike, and I'm calling this L angle the rim strike. So you can do in-swing or outswing. The SB 1600 is not unheard of. We do sell these. It's nice because it has this captive strike. Don't remember the last time I sold this maximum security style bolt. That's been, I did a job, they're heavy duty bolts. I did a job for an armory in the Rocky Mountain area, the western part of the United States, for an armory, a military installation there. They ordered a mess of them. Here's that decorative 253, and those are the glides underneath here that I was referring to earlier. You don't want any marring on the outside of here. It is, if you're a hardware person, you are aware of this marring. I don't know that the general public thinks too much about it, but nonetheless, that 40 design is going to eliminate any marring to the face of the bolt. Let's continue on now with the installation instructions. Okay, now moving on to the installation instructions. We probably should have started there. However, I know that there's not much on this document. This document probably goes back to the late 80s, would be my guess. So they are showing you the rim application and the mortise application. Okay, in swing, out swing. Doesn't have to be in swing, but it probably is. Doesn't have to be out swing, but it probably is. So, tools required: 7/16 drill bit for pilot holes, chisel, Phillips screwdriver, and pencil. Place the bolt in the desired horizontal or vertical position, flush with edge of door. Slide bolt to left, exposing right screw hole, drill and secure. Slide bolt to right, exposing left hole, drill and secure. You got a universal strike, which is this one, what I'm calling a rim strike, and then the mortise strike. Okay. Not very much needing to be added to that. You know, basically position it on the door. Do a reality check. Make sure it's going to fit and work. Mark your holes. Pre-drill your holes. Secure your hardware. Okay? That's really what's happening here. Okay, that brings us to the final portion. The link to the manufacturer's page is here, and that will allow us to pull up a number of things. Not only the link to the full product catalog, a link to the manufacturer's website, but all of the IVES products that we sell as well, of which there are, you know, lots of different products. Okay, lots of available products. Interestingly, for fun, we've got a couple of archival catalogs here. If you wanted to see what IVES was doing in 1904, you could fire that document up and scroll through there. What's really interesting about looking at a catalog that's 115 years old at this point is not much has changed. The majority of hardware that we use every day was certainly invented a very long time ago, and there's really only been evolutionary steps, but the foundation of a sash lock has not changed. Okay, has not changed. This early catalog did not have a lot of different products in it. A lot of it had to do with window hardware, as you can see. I doubt we're going to see those modern bolts in here at all. They had sash pulls or pull-down hooks. In the grammar school I went to, that building was built around World War I, had transoms above all of the doors, and they used pull-down hooks for that material. Could have been manufactured by IVES. Mortise bolts. One interesting thing that's here, though, that you one interesting thing that's here is they are apparently giving us a different part number on this sash lock. They're apparently giving us a different part number for every different color, base material and color. So that's interesting in the fact that you can't really get it wrong because you're ordering the exact part number. If you want a bronze base material with an antique copper finish, you'll order the 150. The problem with this is that bronze base material and an antique copper finish by IVES is not necessarily going to match bronze base material antique copper finish from Yale if you were doing Yale lock sets or Corbin Russwin hinges. And in the very late 1920s and very early 1930s, the U.S. system was put into effect that allowed us to standardize the base material, the finish, I should say, not necessarily the base material, but you could use the U.S. number for bronze base material antique copper, which I don't even know if there is one. There very likely was not one. But there would be for the electro brass plated, and that would be 632. It would be a US 3 would be that finish. So the point is that if you wanted brass plated steel, you would order US 3. The point of that, again, is if you ordered US 3 from IVES and US 3 from Yale, IVES window hardware, but you're doing Yale lock sets, the US3 would match. In the early days, pre-1930 plus or minus, it was this unique proprietary system of calling out finishes, and there's only maybe 15 of them here. But if we were to look at a Corbin Russwin catalog from the late 19th century, you're going to see pages of finishes, a few dozen, in fact. So that's one interesting thing that you see here in this regard. Okay, so fun catalogs are here. Other encyclopedic reference documents are here. Older versions of catalogs and price lists, primarily for our reference. Let's finish up this video on camera. In conclusion, the name IVES is synonymous nowadays with a much expanded offering of hardware. They do still have some of their window hardware, nothing close to what was offered in the early 20th century. There's just no demand. There's no market. There's no client base calling for etched, engraved sash locks. There has been a homogenization of the IVES product line so that it works under the umbrella of the Allegion corporate family that IVES belongs to, with your Schlage locks and your LCN closers and your Von Duprin exit devices and your zero weather stripping and your IVES trim and auxiliary hardware. The good thing about IVES is that they have a lot more products than they used to. Products like trim and auxiliary hardware, kick plates, push and pull hardware, door stops. They have a comprehensive offering of pin and barrel hinges. They have a comprehensive offering of pivots as well. So if you are dealing with commercial hardware, you might want to take a look at IVES for some of those solutions, because you're very likely going to find items that will suit your needs. If you're doing aluminum storefront, or wood doors or hollow metal doors, I'm partial to their pivots. And it's mostly because it seems to be good quality, but their installation instructions are written in a very clear-cut and concise way where it's accessible to the person who's new to the concept of how do pivots work, how do I prep the door, how do I machine the door, how do I install the pivot hardware, where some of the other people that do pivots, it's quite a learning curve initially when you look at a template that has every possible technical dimensional property on the paperwork. And a lot of that is, you have to know a lot of that, but to the neophyte, seeing only what you need is nice. To then go to a different document for all of those additional dimensions does make it more approachable, I think, for the average person, locksmith, handyman, contractor who's never really installed pivots or machined for them. You might want to take a look at IVES pivots. Any questions on the 40 in a B15 and a 6-inch length modern style surface bolt, or any other IVES product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.